You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hola amigos y bienvenidos a la Cantina Cast. Me llamo Alberto Padilla, and this is episode 368. Sorry, okay, it's not Cinco de Mayo. That was yesterday, but you know what? I've always wanted to do like a Spanish intro, and I finally got my chance. So you'll have to apologize. Mike's going to be freaking out. He has no idea what we're doing at this point. So Jonesy, welcome to the show. I probably threw you off with that one as well.
I thought it was fantastic, man. This is perfect because we live down in Texas, right?
Yeah.
So we're used to Telemundo, and we're used to hearing the soccer games and the different the Houston Texans and the Cowboys game broadcast in Spanish. So I was all about it. I was over here just cheering. I was like, man, way to go, represent.
If we had planned this yesterday for Cinco de Mayo, I think I would have just seen that one all the way through. But I thought people are probably wondering, what in the heck did I just tune into? So
they're like, I can't believe I clicked that on my remote. I didn't know I had this on my podcast remote.
Simulcast in Espanol. No, hey, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
Did you get fantastic. Yeah, finally got a little bit of rest last night. We've been very, very busy these last several days, and we had a fantastic time out in Austin. It was great to see you and the wife, and man, tons of great people.
Yes, lots of great people. Let's start there because we do want to say thank you to everybody that was involved. Some of you guys tuned in and saw we did a charity benefit for Silver Lake Creative, and that was to raise money so that we can continue to do the May the 4th Be With You All shows that have been done every year. This was now the 6th year, technically, that we had that show, the benefit. And it was the first time we did anything live. And so we had some technical difficulties, but technical difficulties aside and the sound aside, they raised a lot of money, and first and foremost, right? And I think everybody had a really great time. I know we had a good time getting in there and meeting everybody in face-to-face, and just the whole experience was, couldn't have asked for a better May the 4th. But I did want to say a couple thank yous as well. So for everybody at Silver Lake Creative, so Stephanie, Johnny, Rob, Keith, our Steph, EGM Steph as well. They were all pivotal in kind of putting all that together. Soundstage on St. Elmo for allowing us to be there and just kind of take over for the day, even the night before, with all the stuff that was going on. And so Sam and the technical crew, Austin, Johnny, Frankie, and of course Dave Wolf, who was instrumental in a lot of this stuff as well. From Fan Force, Austin, the guys that helped out, Mark, Lorraine, you guys were there. I know Melissa was there. We had a couple other people show up, so thank you to that. And then, of course, to all the performers and everyone that was involved to help kind of put this together. And if we missed anybody, I do apologize for that. But it was just a great experience, honestly. I mean, it was one of the highlights for me, at least, as part of this show. And I'm looking forward to next year and hopefully being able to do that again without any stinking bugs, man.
Right. This was a lot of fun though, because it gave us a lot of experience with actually putting on a production like this. We've never really done this before, and some of these folks had, but man, the crew out there at Soundstage was super nice. Johnny and them and Austin were really cool to work with, and they would just listen. They would take our feedback, and working with all the Fan Force crew and the Silver Lake creative crew, man, they were just smashing. They were amazing to work with. And my X-Wing shoe buddy Johnny, we had not matching. I have the Celebration red X-Wing shoes from Pozu, and he's got the black ones, but that was awesome. And just being around a bunch of people who just love Star Wars and are just there to have a great time with the 501st and everybody else and these gigantic props. I mean, where else are you going to see a Death Star prop with blast doors? Yeah. Right. I mean, these guys go all out and they do this every year. And it was really cool to be part of something that, if you don't know much about Austin is really big on cultural arts. And there's a slogan about keep Austin weird and things like that. And, Chewbacca Burlesque really does fit that quite well.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Without much doubt. But it was really cool to see people bring the arts out, but also extend that to pop culture and be able to marry the two, have a really cool event and for, be for a good cause and be able to support that type of thing is really awesome to be exciting and excited to be a part of.
Yeah. And I've got the, down on the ticker down there below. If you're watching us with live, you can get to the website at silverlakecreative.org. They have tons of merchandise still available that are available for a donation. Because they are a nonprofit, but I'm still wearing the shirt. I've not taken it off. No, I'm kidding. I did take it.
Such a cool design. You got to go check out this Mandalorian. It's fantastic. It was all over social media. Albert's over here posing with it right now, but fantastic art by Rob on this.
Yeah, great stuff. And there's past. They still have some of the past years T-shirts as well. Vader was last year. There was a C-3PO, an R2-D2, etc. But go check it out. The website again is down at the bottom. Please make a donation. Again, we'll need that money next year so that we can put this show back on and start giving back to the Ronald McDonald House and any other charities that these guys want to align with. So, thanks again. Okay, with that, let's get into Bad Batch. I mean, this feels like the show that we were like made to talk about. It feels like we've like every 6 months we're talking about Bad Batch for one reason or the other, right? Whether it's our own design or the fact that Disney put it back in front of us as part of season 7 of the Clone Wars, and now with its own season, our own series, I would say. In We're going to be talking about this for like the better part of 16 weeks. So I don't want to spoil too much, but I mean, I think it's who was it? One of the producers had the other day, yesterday, a couple days ago, said it's going to be 16 episodes long, which tells me that you had a good theory about the number of maybe series or what do you call it?
The story arcs.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that typically we saw with the Clone Wars. We had 4 episodes in a story arc, and we were really curious how this was going to play out with a 70-minute first episode. But with 16, I'm assuming this counts as episode 1. All of it did, and we're going to go to episode 2 on Friday, the 7th. So if that's the case, then yeah, these 4 stories. But then they don't really have to. They don't have to follow that script, though. This can be one long story. One of the things I was most impressed about with this first episode was that it didn't feel like 4 separate episodes. Like, remember the movie of the Clone Wars?
Yeah,
with Stinky and introducing to Ahsoka and all of that.
Right.
This did not feel anything like that. This actually felt like one continuous, intentional, cinematic type of experience. And that was fantastic. I thought that was a great move. Don't piece these things together. Let it be its own natural, organic kind of flow to it. And it worked out really, really well for her. But having said that, I don't know how that works out for arcs now, because this is really the story and the journey of Bad Batch from here on out. And you don't really have to subscribe to that if you don't want to. And I'm kind of starting to second guess it myself, but off to a great start though. I like
so hold that thought, because I do want to get kind of your overall impressions going into it. But just quickly on this one, so interesting enough, it was directed by Stuart Lee, Saul Ruiz, and Nathaniel Villanueva. So 3 directors, and as I was watching this, of course, my mind goes into trying to figure out who was directing what, and I really couldn't tell. It felt like one cohesive story, so really kudos and props to them for doing that, right? It didn't feel choppy or anything like that. Written by Jennifer Corbett and Dave Filoni, so we kind of knew he was involved in this. And then I guess what was interesting, just before we get into our kind of overall impressions, it opens with the Clone Wars logo, and then it closes with created by Dave Filoni, right? First and foremost, before it gets into the based on characters, created by George Lucas kind of thing. So it does feel like I know Lucas was heavily involved in this. I think he had the idea originally of the Bad Batch, but I don't know that it went anywhere beyond that. And so this almost does feel like this truly is Dave Filoni's ideas now in vision, right? I have a again, pure speculation on my part, but it did feel like he maybe Lucas had a vision of something, right? And kind of a loose vision, high level bullets of what this was going to look like. But we're now in territory that's coming straight out of the creative mind of somebody like Dave Filoni with the writing with Jennifer Corbett.
I absolutely agree. As soon as I saw it, and as soon as they said, Aftermath, and we had the burning away of the logo, and it really cemented itself, like you said, when we saw created by David Filoni, it just made sense. Like, this is Dave's baby now. I mean, Clone Wars was really his too, but this is really his end to end now. He brought these characters to life at the very end of Clone Wars. They were able to actually finish them off, and now we've having this opportunity to really create story in a really cool and interesting time here with the transition of the galaxy and what that looks like. And this episode was all about that. But I was really excited. I said Jennifer's name was all over this thing as well, Jennifer Corbett. And so, man, just can we talk about it now, please?
Yeah, go ahead. Give me your overall kind of impressions before we get into the details.
Right. And I think it's probably important for us to recap a little bit about how we felt about Bad Batch in the past. Right. So when we saw the unfinished episodes, we thought it was pretty cool. It was interesting. We liked the dynamic with Rex, if I recall correctly. But we were like, okay, well, what do you really do with these guys? And when it came out and it was finished, it was really cool and it worked out, but it was more or less what we saw. So I was a bit, lukewarm about this. about this series, because really, what were they going to do?
Mhm.
But where they slotted this thing, and really how they kicked this off, which I was very happy about, that we actually are right up on Order 66. Man, I absolutely love this thing entirely from start to finish. I don't know. There were moments where it wasn't overly super exciting or anything like that, but the story was really solid. The writing was really solid. There was more humor than I expected. The characters had more depth to them. The animation and lighting, Albert, good
Yeah.
night. I
Especially
mean,
that opening sequence.
oh, and just even like towards the end with Crosshair and Hunter and the shadows like in the hangar and stuff.
Mhm.
Man, the lighting and things, and that was one of the main differences in some of the interviews. If you go read them, that was one of the things they kept pulling out, was that, the animation is really good, it has to stay true, but man, the lighting is really what they like really focused on. And oh my goodness, it just makes all the difference. The animation on the show is very Clone Wars still,
Yeah.
but it was just dynamite what they did with it. It was just beautiful to look at all the time, all the time. So I'm absolutely in love with this first episode. I really can't say anything super negative about it. There are a couple little nitpicks maybe, but man, I did not expect to have this overwhelming enthusiasm for it, because quite honestly, I don't have a lot of enthusiasm for everything for much. So it's to have it like this is really exciting for me, because it's been a while since I've kind of been this amped up about something to see that next episode.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm 100%. And again, the fact that we've got 16 episodes going or coming into this is like just mind blowing. We're going to be talking about,
Yeah.
the Bad Batch for a long time. And furthermore, I mean, they said 16 episodes in season 1, right? So they hadn't said this is a one and done kind of thing. I mean,
Right.
that's all probably to be determined based on viewership and whether or not the creative timings there and design, all that stuff probably factors into it as well. But
Right.
it's there's a lot of Clone Wars to be told, and a lot of the Bad Batch to be told, and I'm pretty excited about that. So I would agree and echo everything you said about the animation, the character designs, the textures. I mean, there's that amazing scene that we're going to get to where Kanan is on the other side of the waterfall or other side of the cliff, and you've got the water coming down, the mist coming up. I mean, it's just the eye candy, right? On top of that, you've got the textures now that kind of started right originally with that Clone War, very first movie, and now we've got to the point when you just look at it, it looks like a kind of like an oiled brush-stroked paint to it.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's great stuff. So all on all accounts, I think they did a really good job technically. Kiner's music was, I think, pivotal. It felt like
Oh,
it was.
yeah. There were a couple moments in there. I can't wait to talk about the music, because it was
Yes. So, and I would say
perfect.
that there's moments in there where it was really powerful.
Mhm.
And then otherwise it did. I felt like it just did its job, right? It wasn't.
Absolutely.
It felt like it was just a continuation of Clone Wars, right?
Perfect. Yep.
And probably the best part, not to jump ahead, was the very end with the standoff. When that happened, the music that was going on there while they were, standing off there in the hangar, perfect stuff. So let's get into let's talk about the episode now, if you don't mind, unless you got anything else that you want to kind of throw in there before we go on.
No, let's do it. I mean, I'm excited to talk about what we first get exposed to with the episode too.
Yeah.
I was not expecting Tom Kane's voice.
Yeah. Well, and before we get there, I would
Yeah.
say the only thing that was like, really? Was the title. Like it said Aftermath, and it's like a tiny little font in red, no kind of flair to it.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that was by design.
Oh yeah, I
You think
loved it.
so?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely loved it. I mean, and again, the clone that it said Clone Wars to start surprised me. I really didn't expect it to say Clone Wars, for it to burn away. And the Bad Batch was a really cool effect, but I liked it. It was very unassuming, right? And it just that's all there is. It's just Aftermath. It's very
And I
to the
was,
point, and I thought it was very powerful, for lack of a better word, in that one.
yeah, it felt like maybe it was what I was like, in its defense, I felt like, okay, well, it's trying to, there is maybe I don't know if the font's going to change, but if it doesn't, then it does feel kind of very mission briefing kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
Whereas if it changes next one, then maybe they were going for the, hey, this is a kind of a pivotal, somber moment, right? Sober moment with Order 66 about to happen, and so they didn't want to take anything away from it. But yes, getting Tom Kane right out of the gate feels like this is just a natural carryover from the Clone Wars, as it should be, right? I really, I kind of see this as a continuation of the Clone Wars, season 9 or season 8, if you will, right?
Absolutely.
And it does kind of feel that way in a lot of ways. But I think this episode will probably be the last episode that it truly feels that way because of all the changes that have happened, because Order 66 is there, because we've lost a lot of things like the humanity of the clones and all that. It's going to feel more like maybe Star Wars Rebels, right?
Right.
Which is fine with me. I mean, I'm totally down for that. But yeah, Tom Kane coming in, doing his thing was just perfect. And I'm worried now because I don't know if he got all of these done before he kind of became ill, and I don't know if he's going to be able to continue on doing the voice narration. But you're a good shoo-in, so if he can't make it, I'm putting your name in the hat to come back and do the Tom Kane voice. So,
oh man, I appreciate it.
yeah, I got you, buddy.
Thanks. Well, yeah, I hope so too. But if it was only for this one, that's cool. It was for the movie, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious. Well, we probably won't see the Clone Wars logo anymore because we are now officially out of the Clone Wars. But it was a nice segue to say, no, we're right. We're still in the Clone Wars, just briefly. But I have to ask you though, were you surprised to see Caleb Doom or Kanan, as we all like to call him? Were you surprised to see him? Well, at all in this, or did that make sense to you?
Yeah, I know it was a surprise. I mean,
wait,
absolutely.
hold on. You know what we got to say? Spoilers, everyone. We are going to spoil the living hell out of the show.
Well,
if it wasn't already clear,
we're
reviewing the episode. We are going to do this for 17 hours today.
Yeah.
You're welcome, but we are going to spoil everything. So this is your warning. If we've not spoiled it enough already, we're going to spoil all of it for you. We keep forgetting to do the spoiler warnings because we just assume people know us, but oh well.
Yeah, we're probably a little late to the game too, but we had stuff going on. Okay, so in our defense, we had stuff going on. So
all right. Caleb Doom.
Caleb Doom, no, not expecting that whatsoever. Don't know that that had to be Caleb Doom. I'm glad it was, just because, I mean, they kind of teased him in season 7, right? In that one episode, we see him standing there with Deepa and all that. But did we? No, it was completely unexpected. And let's just pull the Band-Aid off, right? I mean, there's been a lot of discussion already about whether or not, how does this, they've altered what we thought was canon, right, in the canon comic. But this isn't the first time they've done it. They did it with Ahsoka, and the Darth Maul fight that they have at the beginning of the Ahsoka novel was very different than what we saw in season 7 of the Clone Wars. We also had the what was the other one, the Cobb Vanth, right? I mean, that whole kind of thing. And there's there's a lot to be said about, well, maybe these are just interpretations or points of view, and some of the details were lost. At the end of the day, I don't know that it bothers me that much. My mantra for Star Wars has always been just give me a good story. Right. It is important, I think, I get it, though. I know some people are kind of rubbed by this stuff because, we put so much time and we invest so much into this, and Star Wars means so many things to us on a very deep and emotional level that it feels like that to get that chair pulled out from underneath you and feel like, okay, wait a minute, what about, everything that I'd speculated, everything that I thought about, and, all the canon that was there, and now it's altered and changed, and it's different. It feels different, but at the same time, it's, for me at least, it's kind of easy to get past it. I kind of had a shock moment and thought, what's happening here?
Right.
But at the end of the day, I thought it was a good retelling, if you will. It doesn't really change anything, right? I mean, all the same main beats were hit with his story, just the details were a little bit different. So what did you think? Did it bother you in any way?
Well, no, and I think that was some of the interviews that happened. And if you go out to StarWars.com, folks, you can go out there and read some of the interviews, and they actually talk about this specifically about, how they wanted to do this and whether or not it's a retelling or anything. And they really looked at this as a bit of a tweak or an enhancement of it, or a perspective kind of change. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that assessment, but I don't really have a problem with tweaking. And we have to be really honest with ourselves, folks. Very few people in relative to the Disney Plus watching community know anything about the comic book.
Yes.
So yes, I agree with you. It means a lot to us. It's a little bit frustrating whenever they do tweak something or they do change it. If it was vague, that's one thing. But if it's relatively clear, that feels a little bit, off-putting. But we've seen, like you said, we've seen this before. We've seen them tweak it in the books. We've seen something from the books get tweaked a little bit a different way. And again, for the visual part, I think you and I put a lot of stock in the books and the comics and things like that. I think we still default to what we see on screen as the absolute canon.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's always been kind of the thing with Star Wars. And George Lucas very much thought that way, even though he endorsed some of the, what we would call legends now. A lot of that was kind of outside his realm. So the only thing that he wanted to talk about was whatever was actually on screen, unless it was Mara Jade. He loved talking about Mara Jade. him and Mike used to have powwows about Mara Jade.
Yeah. Long discussions about it.
Right. But I liked seeing Caleb. I like that we got the story and that we get to see him in a different light, and that the relationships they have with clones and the excitement and just kind of this youthful enthusiasm. but also they really captured the fear and the confusion in this. And this is why I knew this episode was, we were on the right foot with this type of moment, that we could really set the emotional stage of what this might mean and what that experience looks like for him, as well as for any other surviving Jedi. Just the terror that it has, and the who do you trust? And I mean, we're like, no, trust Hunter. He's fine. He's cool. But I mean, Crosshair's just lurking in the background. We speculated about Crosshair a lot before this, but
Yeah, that's true.
I was really excited to see him. They got the lightsaber right, so it's still his same lightsaber, which I thought was cool. And Freddie Prinze Jr., man,
Hey.
yeah, good try on being a kid.
Why wouldn't they just did some kind of a, I don't know,
I agree,
filter,
yeah.
or do something to do his voice down, or just take it down, take the tone down a little bit. I mean, we can do all that here. I can do that from my stinking MacBook. I mean,
yeah, you can do anything with the MacBook.
it was it was a little deep though. It was like, hey, yeah, and there was
he bounced in, and it was inconsistent. Right.
True.
There were moments where,
yes,
yeah, he was kind of hitting it, right? And then,
right.
But then it would be like he was a little bit older, because how old do you think he was in this? It looked like he was like 8.
Maybe 10 most, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe going through early stages of puberty, probably not.
Right, yeah.
But it was still cool to see him. I thought it was fun. The do we let them do what they do, Caleb? Kind of thing. And
yep.
Again, the humor was always there and was really cool. And no, I thought it was cool to see Kanan there and give him a little bit of backstory too. And I don't know if I think we had a question in there about, I think from Bo, whether or not we were going to see Caleb Doom again within these episodes. And I think I hope not, actually. I like the mystery of what was Kanan doing. And if we're going to explore that, let's give Kanan that opportunity to explore it, kind of like Jedi Fallen Order. Let's have that kind of storyline and allow that to take place in a different place. This is really a completely different type of story, but really cool to see him though.
Yeah, I would. I wouldn't be opposed to it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah, the only thing that you can't, for me, I don't know that. Okay, so if he comes back and he has a chance to kind of like save them, help them in return, right? There's that kind of a cool moment between him and Hunter again. Maybe they have an opportunity to do it again. He does help him or go with him for whatever reason. Fine. But the only thing that worries me is a little bit is, we get no mention later on in Rebels from Kanan that he knew the Bad Batch, or that there was, troop. It's a continuity thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't want it to dilute either his animosity towards the clones. Right. That is a big part of Rebels. Him coming around to Rex and really making peace, and that kind of diminishes and dilutes, and I think detracts from that whole relationship that takes a few seasons really to kind of build into the point where they're they have that big salute moment at the very end there before they he goes away. So I think that would certainly undermine that a little bit. But if it's just a quick minor thing and it's, oh look, he is back, or we see him, he's been interested in them and he's following them and all that, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but in moderation, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. This is one of those times where less is more. And I agree with you. We don't want to diminish the story we had with Rebels, because it was, a few seasons of really a lot of growth for Kanan in particular. And, if we're going to explore Kanan, let's give Kanan his own due. Let's not mix everything together too much. There are going to be other characters in the series. It's pretty much guaranteed. So Caleb is now check. We can move on from Mr. Doom.
Yeah, there you go, Bo. Yeah, you're saying the same thing we just did too. Yeah, that's that whole relationship is kind of, I'd like to preserve that as much as possible. Yep. So we open up on Kaller, and that is the same planet that was in the Kanan comic. So again, no changes there. Right. I mean, the key takeaway for that scene really is he is doing. He sees his master do what ultimately he's going to do when he dies. Putting himself first, allowing the ones that he loves, or the ones he cares about, to escape. And so that's exactly what happened in the comic, right? She tells him run away in both scenarios. And I know there was the changes
even
the
hand motion was
similar.
Yeah.
But like Gray, Commander Gray, and Commander, what was the other one? Do you remember?
I didn't catch the other one. No, Gray.
Either way, there was two of them. In this one, there's only one. Right? These are again little minor things that really don't change what the objective of that scene and the power of that scene. So
Right.
it didn't bother me too much. I was interested though. I was curious. I would say that the Bad Batch did not react differently than they did. Like they seemed to. I'm not going to say they were complacent or they seemed okay with the fact that they just murdered a Jedi. But given their relationship with the Jedi, I don't know. It just didn't. I don't know. Maybe they were just shocked. Maybe they were just
Yeah.
shell shocked about what had happened, and they were more concerned about Kanan running off in that little Jedi and tracking him down. But they're just kind of like, oh, okay, we just killed a Jedi for no freaking reason, in cold blood. But whatever, it's no big deal.
I thought we got a little bit of a semblance that they were in shock, a little bit of just confusion, like what is going on and what did we just witness? And it doesn't make sense for, especially Echo. I mean, Echo served with the Jedi, directly.
Yeah.
I mean, we know the Bad Batch have two in a very small case, but Echo spent a lot of time with them. And for him, he's just like, this isn't right. Like it's clear, and we're going to talk about inhibitor chips a lot, I'm sure, but with Echo, it's just, man, this is just wrong. And how is this even possible? And for them to go and pursue the Jedi and try, or pursue Kanan and try to, or Caleb, I guess. Do I have to call him Caleb or can I call him Kanan?
You can call him Kanan. It's fine.
I'll call him whatever I want. Doom. Hey, Doom.
Doom.
Right. I think for them to pursue that was, again, trying to find answers and, again, protect the innocent. He is just a child, even though he's a Jedi. He's still just a child and needs protecting or needs at least something to help. Can we stop all of this real quick? And can we figure out what's going on? Because it took them a little while before tech figured out what message was going across.
Yeah. And then as far as I guess let's talk about how the clones reacted, because that was, and I mentioned it earlier, but it was a big stark difference to go from the humanistic character traits, the humanity of the clones. And we've talked about this, right? Their individuality and how that was so different and what set them apart from the droids and the separatists, right? And suddenly we get this very cold, we get the vanilla stormtroopers at this point, just like that. And they seem to be completely on board. And that tells me that, the inhibitor chips are more than just, they're going to follow orders. Like this was a personality thing. I mean, it felt like I was wondering whether or not the clones would simply follow that order and then still have all their individuality, uniqueness kind of traits. And it feels like, no, that's not what happened here. They were kind of all blanketed and all became one kind of persona that we see going forward. And they just were zombies. They were basically the droids now that they were fighting against.
Right. It was very much like when someone's hypnotized and you have that magic word and they just start doing whatever. It seemed very much like that, where the programming took over and you heard the word and everything was else. I mean, and what's even stranger though is that, and we see this throughout the episode, now the clones are almost like in a cult-like state.
Right.
I mean, seriously, cult-like state. I mean, this looks like all of the things you've seen on TV from the previous world wars and just what you would expect to see of, fanaticism. And that was really weird to see. We've seen them be excited and things like that before, but to just unquestioningly, go to, is that a word? But to unquestioned go into and support an empire when we hear the Bad Batch and Echo, like, wait a minute, we fought for the Republic. Why would we support an empire? That doesn't make sense. That is completely contradictory to what our whole purpose was. So why is no one challenging what is going on? But man, yeah, they just snap right to it. And that rub between Regs and the Bad Batch, that didn't go anywhere though. Because
I mean, if anything, it was like exasperated based on just the interaction. They felt like they remembered all that, right? They were
right. Yeah,
that didn't go away at all. They kind of got what they normally got once they got back onto Camino.
Right. But then, so what do you think about the actual fighting real quick? Let's just kind of get this out of the way. We saw the Bad Batch, kind of come in, save the day, roll the big rock, Crosshair with this cool little mag thing, and Wrecker pushing the tanks over the edge.
I thought it was okay. I would say that was the only part that felt a little underwhelming, only because I think we've seen them do bigger things in previous episodes. And so I was expecting them to show up and be like,
right,
just, at least at that same level. And this one felt like it was, it felt like Wrecker was weaker Like I was like, okay, I could have sworn this guy was stronger, maybe not. I don't know. It was a little underwhelming, but it served its purpose, right? Again,
Right.
if this is your first entry into the Bad Batch in Star Wars, there was enough there for you to kind of get a sense of, okay, that's a strong guy. That guy's really good with a knife. That guy's really good at shooting things.
We
This guy's a
don't
smart guy.
we don't know what Echo's good thing is though.
He's got a screwdriver. Anytime they need a Phillips screwdriver, he's there on the
It's
spot.
but it's a flathead. So
A flat. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's a flathead. He's probably got multiple attachments. He's probably got an Allen wrench on there. He's got a
torques.
star.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got everything. He's got them all. But no, I would say it served its purpose, right? It wasn't, again, it probably wasn't their most dramatic entry that they've done, but it was enough to,
Quick reintroduction. Yeah.
Right. Here these guys are. Remember us kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So at that point, Caleb is, running away. He's retreating, like Deepa told him to do, get out of there. And they're kind of chasing him. And they're running from Crosshair, who is impacted at this point. And we know this later on. It didn't, when you watch it again, you go like, oh, okay, yeah, you can kind of see the signs that something's been changed, something's been altered there.
Right.
But yeah, when they go after him, he says, what are you doing? He says, following orders. Good soldiers follow orders. And that line was lifted from the Kanan comic. There was that, I think it was Commander Gray that said that. He kept saying, good soldiers follow orders.
It was from Clone Wars too. Remember Fives? Yeah, Fives kept repeating it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
soldiers follow orders.
Right. Yeah. So, and this was obviously to the extreme, although we know later on we find out that he wasn't fully impacted, and they kind of fix that a little bit later. But that would, he says, that would explain things. It doesn't begin to explain things. That whole exchange, right? That they said the Jedi had committed treason. So there's little hints that they're trying to they're dropping in there that things aren't right with him. They got Kanan kind of backed up against a tree. He ignites his lightsaber. I thought that was a really good moment. Just that sound of Kanan's lightsaber, hearing it again. We haven't heard it since, Star Wars Rebels, the last season of that. And that whole scene on the waterfall, like right before that, it felt to me like the, what do you call it? Not Rey Skywalker. It's Luke Skywalker from Empire Strikes Back. Right, where he's on the ledge and he's got Dad sitting there saying, "Join me," and he's reaching out to him, and Luke decides to jump, and Kaylin decides or let go, I guess, more than anything.
Right.
And you got Caleb, who decides to jump and leave. I mean, they're been very different, but it was kind of similar in tone. You could see kind of Hunter leaning in and trying to take his hand, but this kind of sets the tone though for Hunter too, because he is now very. He almost gets a second chance with Omega a little bit later, right? And he makes another comment a little bit later too about kids, and so there's something about him, like this fatherhood piece of him that's coming out, right? Of that I don't know that we've seen it. Well, we're probably going to see it in the next episode with Cut, but we'll get to there in a little bit. But yeah, this just kind of this fatherly figure. He's almost taking on that role, and like you said earlier, that was another level to him, another dimension to him that we did not get from Clone Wars, prior to season 7 when they were there, much less in season 7. So I thought it was good. It was another depth, another layer to him, and I'm wondering how that's going to turn out, and that relationship's going to go, with Omega, and kind of seeing her as a second opportunity there, and another opportunity to kind of make that right, and fatherly figure a child.
Right, and we've got a comment from M. Letterer. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. Don't you think Hunter would dig into what Crosshair was thinking after he was pursuing so hard? And yeah, I think we were getting there in short. I think Hunter's trying to figure out what's going on. Things keep happening. Crosshair is acting weird. Crosshair, doesn't mind disobeying orders, but all of a sudden now he's a bit, really stingy about some of this, and there's a bit of a rub. But he has no reason not to trust him, right? And we saw Crosshair when he knocked Caleb out of the tree, he shot the branch. So Crosshair doesn't miss, although he missed a lot this episode, but
did miss a lot. Yeah.
But he doesn't, when he has a shot like that, he doesn't miss. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, because again, like you said, we learned later that the inhibitor chip is working, but not quite fully functioning, not as strong as what we see in the regs. But so I think Hunter would have gotten there, and I think he was getting there, but things kept happening to where he couldn't focus enough time on Crosshair to really see what is going on. But you can already tell he knows something's not right, especially when by the time we get to Alderaan.
Yeah, and I would say like for Hunter, maybe he's looking at Crosshair and thinking, okay, maybe he's reacting to this a little bit differently, or he's just This is a lot for him, right? He probably given him the benefit of the doubt there. Crosshair was never the most charismatic, outspoken person. I mean, he was kind of the grumbly guy in the background already. So
He's the Clint Eastwood character.
yeah. So I mean, I'm sure he was kind of like, maybe this was really him just having a really bad day, woke up with the wrong side of the bed, that kind of thing. So there's probably reasons why he was at first like, okay, not too big of a deal. Yes, this is probably uncharacteristic of him, even for him. But as time went on, okay, now it kept lingering and it kept getting worse and festering, and he was starting to see the pattern there. And I think it kind of culminates when they get to Onderon. He kind of gives him that look of like, you and me are going to talk later, buddy, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I think by that point he was done with him.
Right.
Let's see. Where are we with it?
So Caleb makes the jump.
And then we've got Hunter or Crosshair who comes in and he's suspicious of something. I thought it was a great line. He's like, if he fell down, why were you looking straight ahead, kind of thing.
Very, very perceptive.
Yeah, very perceptive is a good point. And that kind of sets the tone for what's about to, again, kind of fester and rage between those two. But we go back to Camino, which we knew was coming from the trailer. Things do seem very different now, right? There's not the big hustle. Like if you go back and watch the Clone Wars and how they're kind of walking around in Camino, it feels more lively. Again, that humanity's there. And this is kind of like this, I don't know, clean room. Even when they were coming in, right, they had to get checked in and there was, additional protocols that were being put in place. And they were kind of like, what's this all about? And then when they get there, it is very different. The mood feels different. At least for me, it did. Having been on Camino before, I could tell, right? Something was definitely different about what was going on. And we get the whole conversation about, why, they get back into their, was it their bunker or whatever, or the area that they sleep in, bunks, yeah. And they're talking about, what possibly could have happened and with the inhibitor chips and stuff. And I thought it was interesting that Tech said that it was well documented that they were programmed this way.
Well, and I think I took that as that they were programmed from birth to be fighters, and that they've been conditioned. I viewed it more as conditioning as programming, which I think is an accurate correlation between those. And I think that's where I was going to. I don't know that he knew about the inhibitor. Did he actually admit to knowing anything about the inhibitor chip, though?
Yeah, because he later on he goes and explains that because they had been. I mean, he goes and explains it all to for us as the viewer, but he's doing it to the other clones as well. And he's saying, look, the reason why we weren't impacted and why all that was because we've been genetically altered, right? For us, and the way I read that was that inhibitor chip was designed for a specific genetic code, right?
Right.
The minute these clones were made, they are genetically deformed. They're mistakes. They're bad. And
they called them mutations, though.
Mutations, yeah.
Which I thought was interesting, yeah.
But either way, the inhibitor chip was never programmed for their genetic codes because they are so different. So that didn't impact them. And then you've got somebody like Echo who was, quote, more machine than man, which I thought was a cool throwback to episode 4.
But him too. He doesn't like that.
Yeah. But because he was more machine than man, he had been so altered at this point that through just bodily repair and replacement and all that he was immune to it as well. So, but yeah, I mean, it seemed like he had more information, more intel, and maybe he does. Maybe he just found out himself and was like, okay, whatever, they're regs. I don't really care, right? We're superior to them. And so he's kind of maybe harbored that knowledge for a very long time. But what did you think about the explanation? Because I know we did a lot of speculation about, were they going to be impacted? Did they remove the chips? I mean, we know definitely now, definitively, how this happened. But were you okay with the explanation as to why they weren't impacted?
Yeah, actually, I thought it was great, and I thought it was great that that's how Crosshair is affected, and that why. And I thought the explanations worked perfectly. I mean, it makes sense that they would all have it, and it would make sense that they're so different that they wouldn't behave the same way and they wouldn't be subject to the same things that others would. And it's interesting why Crosshair is that different. And I think it was really interesting when they enhanced Crosshair's programming, I guess you could call it. But I thought it was a great explanation. I thought it really worked and it was natural and very organic for the show and didn't take anything away from everything else we had learned about it, and actually was quite consistent and continuity wise. I thought it worked really well. What about you?
Yeah, no, I loved it. It makes sense, right? It certainly wasn't like this far-fetched theory that was really nebulous or was Star Wars science. I mean, they did a good job of kind of grounding it in what we know of Star Wars and all of that, especially since genetics are such a big thing these days. It's a hot topic in Star Wars. And now it's now I want to know more about the other stuff. Like, and I'm really excited. Like the future looks bright for us in terms of knowing what happens to Cody and Wolf, and I mean on and on, all these different clones that we've wondered about.
Right.
I think we're gonna see and finally get the answers to it, which is great because I honestly didn't think we'd ever get those. So
Yeah, I didn't either. Yeah, this is fantastic.
we got the Galactic Empire speech from Palpatine, which was pretty much word for word. Could you tell? Did they? And anybody that's listening, view or following along here, tell me what you guys think too. But did we get? Was that a lift right out of Episode 3, or did they bring Ian McDiarmid in to redo those lines?
It was not Ian McDiarmid. It was the guy.
Well, he was quoted in the credits.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah.
No,
he was.
He re-recorded because the word society was the one, because I thought the same thing for a bit. I was like, is this him or is this the actor? But when he did society in the movie, he's very society, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But this one didn't have that. So I think he re-recorded it because some of some of it was different, but it was very, very spot on. So it worked really, really well. I was glad we got to see it again because I think it was just a powerful moment. This is where the fanaticism and the cult-like aspects of the clones really shone through. Although some of the animation was a little bit clunky too here, but it was really just really odd to see the clones, celebrating. I mean, of course, they just won the war, right?
Right.
And this is what we've all wanted. We won, so we're the good guys, and we won, so everything's fine, right? But they have no idea what's about to befell these, their entire life, and then their entire, I don't even know what you call them, their race. I mean, they're kind of their own thing,
Their expiration date.
There you go. Yeah,
but
they have one now.
In their defense, though, I mean, in their defense, they are not who they were.
Right.
And that's the sad part. Like I think we've talked about this before. Like I hated the clones when Clone Wars came out because to me, they were just the stormtroopers. And it took me a while to get on board with liking the clones and realizing that these guys were the good guys because I'm old and that's what I was brought up on. Right.
Right.
But, it is sad now because to go from that and now go back and go, okay, now they just were churned into the people that I hated before they started is just, it is a little, it's a little sad. Kind of, I would say devastating, but yeah, it's a huge setback for those people because, their personalities are there and that humanity is still there somewhere. It's just suppressed now because of the inhibitor chips.
Yeah. And I thought with some interesting comments that they differentiated between the colors and the regs, like the ones who are just in the whites, right? So all of the other ones, there's always act weird. They're always different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a kind of an interesting little side comment that they had made where I didn't really equate that at all because the regular clone troopers all had personalities as well. So I don't necessarily understand why that was such a differentiating factor, but apparently it was.
Yeah. Just quickly, Jeremiah had mentioned that there's the Hot Toys out there for Echo and that they're going to be having all these extensions and stuff for, I guess, parts that you can put on his prosthetic piece. Do you think we'll see any of those later on? I think we probably will. I mean, usually when they do that stuff, it's because it's going to be in there, or at least it was in some of the concept art that they get when they're going to design these toys.
Right.
So, and I hope they do because otherwise, it's I'm tired of seeing him with that little flathead screwdriver. That he's
I don't like it.
with.
Yeah, he looks useless.
Give him like a weapon or something. But who was the He-Man character? Wasn't there a He-Man character like that as well? Or am I thinking of?
No, Trapjaw was like one of the villains. Yeah, he had the gun and he had all sorts
of trident.
Yeah. Well, no, that was Merman. But,
okay, all right.
But no, Trapjaw was the one. He had the detachable stuff.
He's no Fisto. How about that?
He's no Fisto or no jujitsu. But yes.
Okay.
I hope we get a Transformer of Echo now. I'm excited about this. Give me a Transformer. We have a Transformer for everything else these days, from Ghostbusters to Back to the Future. So
I have those.
Why not? I know you got one right over there in your room. I saw it.
All right. Wrong podcast. Totally different podcast. Okay. All right. Let's talk about Omega. Omega, as she calls herself.
Right.
She's introduced as being Nala Se's assistant, so she's a medical assistant.
Human female of unknown origins.
Human female, parts unknown, size unknown. But what are your thoughts? I mean, so again, I said this was kind of Hunter's second chance. He's got some kind of affinity for her. He even says it out loud, right? There's something about her he's not sure he feels like a connection to her in some way. Later on, Tech mentions that she's got a heightened sense of awareness. And and that's really all he kind of alludes to. Now, there are clues that are dropped, I think, throughout this. Not big ones, but smaller ones. But before I go into all of that, what did you think? Like, if you were to did you like your character? I liked her. Didn't know how I would feel towards her because I thought, okay, this is kind of it was starting to feel like Grogu. You've got a kid. They're taking care of the kid. They've got she's got abilities or she's special in some way. It was starting to feel all that way, but I was on board with it at the very end. But what are your thoughts? And then certainly if you got any speculation as to what is her mutation or what is her defect.
So I think that's a really fair assessment, a very fair comparison, because quite honestly, I think it's accurate. I think you do have a kid with certain abilities and that's worth rescuing, and they're going to go do whatever. But I don't know, when he said that she has a heightened sense of awareness, I don't know that I really saw that anywhere, because she was around Nala Se whenever Tarkin was there and got the impression that he didn't like the clones and things like that, and just really got it out for him and whatnot. So I don't know. And when they depart and she goes to run to Hunter and is like, don't come back type of thing, or take me with you, and he won't. And, all of that. We get the sense where she wants to tell him something, but we don't know what. And I was curious to get your thoughts about, what do you think she was wanting to say to him in that moment? Was that she was also the clone? I mean, I know I skipped a bit here because we learned that there's 5 unaltered clones that are defective clones, and Tarkin believes that it's all 5 of them with Echo,
right?
Not with Omega.
Omega. Yeah. If the question is, what was she going to tell him? I thought about that a lot, to be honest, because Filoni doesn't throw that stuff in there without something, right. And likely he will come out and explain it at some point down the road, which is kind of cool about him. But I would say I was under the impression that she was going to give him some information about what was about to happen. Like, she seems to be so awareness. You make a good point though. Like, hold on, I got 2 thoughts that I'm trying to get out here.
Yeah.
One, I'm with you. Like, he makes that comment about awareness, but we don't really see the awareness until after, when they're in jail and she's aware that they're about to come in there, like the soldiers are approaching, or she makes some comment about that, right? But prior to that, I didn't really get that, unless it was just her being creeper-like, standing there watching them during the what was it, the celebration scene or whatever.
You can hear footsteps though before she says that.
Yeah,
if you crank it up, you can hear footsteps. So I didn't.
So you didn't count it.
I didn't count that as some special perception. I think she can just hear.
Well, you obviously have a heightened sense of awareness. Okay.
I do.
Because you could hear the footsteps and I couldn't.
I
But
can see your beauty from Houston, Texas too.
All right, enough of that. But I guess as far as, what she was trying to say, I did get a sense that she probably could see into the future. Maybe, possibly. Whether that, and we'll talk about that. Well, we can talk about it now. Whether that is she's force sensitive by nature, right? It's a numbers game if you think about it for people that are force sensitive, right? There's billions and billions of people out there. Another inside joke. Billions of people out there in the Star Wars galaxy, and it's just a matter of time before one of them pops out being force sensitive, whether it's through natural, birthing, or whether it's through genetically created people, right?
Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason why they're force sensitive.
Right. I think there is probably some story threads, plots in there that'll pan out over the course of the season, where they are experimenting and trying to create a force sensitive creature or force sensitive thing that would nicely tie into the Rise of Skywalker and Palpatine, and maybe some of his endgame plans and Operation Cinder and all that stuff. And maybe this is the origins of what eventually becomes somebody like Grogu, and being able to kind of, take midichlorians and try to manipulate those with genetic clones. They certainly have access at this time to a lot of force sensitive people, a lot of people with midichlorians. It's very different than when we get to the Mandalorian, right? So, if you, that alone, I mean, who was it? Who was it? The master that died? I'm trying to think of the name that they mentioned in We saw him in the Clone Wars. They mentioned him in episode 2. Somebody tell me what his name is. But that ordered the clone army.
Sifo Dyas. Yeah.
Sifo Dyas. So Sifo Dyas, that was Dooku taking him down. So they had, I guess what I'm saying is they had ample blood to extract midichlorians and do whatever they wanted. And I can see a plot where they were trying to manipulate this. And so Omega was created, but maybe it's somebody like Nala Se who has an affinity for her because she is a girl. She was the last one. She harbors her and tries to hide her and keep her safe. And because she knows that, hey, if the Emperor gets a hold of her or Tarkin gets a hold of her, they're going to do stuff to her. They're going to alter her, or they're going to cut her up and do experiments on her and that sort of thing, trying to reproduce that kind of lab experiment all over again. So,
right.
So I guess what I'm saying is either she was born Force sensitive naturally, which I think is a cooler story to me, because it perpetuates this the idea that they really truly, as much as they were created out of test tubes, they really are human. And it goes back, it plays into Yoda's speech at the very beginning, that first episode of the Clone Wars. Remember where he's talking to the clones and tells them that they are alive and that they're part of the Force, just like everybody else, right? I think it plays into that, which I think is really nice. It kind of sets that up as a kind of a bookend kind of thing. But the other story is that she was genetically altered, and she was a success story for them to create a Force sensitive creature. And I think there's something interesting about that as well. So I don't know.
Did you create a female at the same time?
Right.
How does this all work in, or was there some mutation that happened and then they did something else on top of it too? So I think it's a great story to try to figure out. And what was really interesting, and I know we're going to jump a little bit here, but I think it's worth just kind of talking as a group about Omega and Nala Se and even Lama Su. I think of she kind of does have a bit of a motherly aspect to her, which I was a little surprised that the Kaminoans are so cold,
right,
to pretty much everything. But clearly there is a lot of value with Omega, and at the very end of the episode, or towards the end of the episode, whenever Omega does leave with the Bad Batch, they certainly have that aspect of, we need to keep this close to the vest. We want to make sure that until the Empire really tells us what they're doing, we're not going to spill any extra. We're not going to let them actually know what they have, because they knew right away when she mentioned they had 5, and Tarkin's wanted to test these others, that they were on the wrong foot. So she's already intentionally misleading them,
right,
as it was, right? So I know jumping ahead a little bit there, but it's worth just kind of rounding out that conversation, I think, on that one, and we'll come back to it, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll get to it when the escape happens there towards the very end. But yeah, I would say though, so Force sensitive is one option. Another is she may have just multiple genetic mutations. Maybe she has a heightened sense of awareness later on when she takes that shot and shoots Crosshair's gun right out of his hand. I mean, come on, right? I mean, that's either the Force,
right?
And I think of like Ben Kenobi or Obi-Wan Kenobi saying, in my experience, there's no such thing as luck, right?
Right. Oh my gosh, she's Rey. She's Rey.
Yeah, we won't get at that. But there's so she could be, it could be that, it could be the Force, another example of the Force, or it could be just a natural affinity. She's an expert marksman and she doesn't even know it yet. Like she even says, I've never even fired one of these things.
Right.
And yet she's able to do that.
And presumably she's still a descendant of Jango Fett, right? Or a copy of Jango Fett in some capacity. All of them still are.
That rich Fett blood.
That rich young blood. Wait, hold on. That Fett blood. But I mean, there's still something to it, right? I mean, you still do inherit things from your parents, and some of that is an affinity to shoot a weapon. I mean,
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a skill, but I guess you can inherit some ability to shoot things.
Yep. It's years of evolution in the Fets.
Right. But it was curious. So we did get lots of confirmation, though, they still do have baby clones. So she's not the last clone. She is just the last of a mutated, defective batch.
Right. Yeah. I think we were speculating Omega meant she was the last one and they had shut the baby factory down, but apparently not. No. Yeah. We got to see that little poor sap that was sitting there is probably never going to make it out of that tube. So yeah, take that, kids. Okay. So let's get to Tarkin's visit, because I thought that was I loved Tarkin in this episode.
He was dynamite.
I thought he was great. It was good to see him on Kamino, sitting in the same chair as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, those were all great scenes. And then just his pure skepticism about whether or not these guys were any good. And I forget who does the voice for him. Was it?
I don't remember.
I can't remember who does it either. But I think he does a really good job. He rolls his R's perfectly, as Peter Cushing did. But I mean, he says the key takeaway from that short scene was it was beautiful. It was Palpatine. He corrects him now. It's not Chancellor Palpatine. It's Emperor Palpatine, which I thought was interesting, funny. And he gets out of this contract with the Kaminoans because it's a technicality, right? Yeah. Hey, that contract is null and void at this point because that was with the Republic. Hey, guess what? Sorry, but we're no longer the Republic. We now call ourselves the Galactic Empire. Right. So
change your name. Doesn't count anymore.
It doesn't count anymore, right? I don't know if that would fly in a legal court battle, but who knows?
So I got to get your input on this.
Yeah.
We don't want clones anymore because they're too expensive. I mean,
it seems like that would be the cheapest thing. I mean,
they're already there. You don't have to go. You don't have to go and do anything except keep the baby factory open.
Yeah.
And I get that. I get that's expensive, but why is money all of a sudden a problem? Is because Palpatine needs to start funneling it into his Star Destroyer programs for 50 years from now, or what? This frustrated me a little bit that it was all about cost.
Like it should be for every good corporation, right? They're looking at head count, they're looking at their total costs.
But you have beings who will not think for themselves, and they will go do what you want, no matter how bad it is, and no matter who they do it to.
Yeah.
And which is more important to you? Unquestioning loyalty, which is what Tarkin keeps, stressing. And so I'm very curious because this just doesn't jive of what the Empire is really looking for. And I get everything costs money, but they can just print it. Who cares?
Credits. Just print credits.
Yeah, just print credits.
Paper credits.
They have no morals, so whatever.
So, I don't know. I mean, I guess what they're trying to say is raising kids and keeping them there, feeding them, sheltering them, the training that goes involved, all the equipment costs, everything else. When you look at that, and I'm kind of joking, but not really. The argument would be that if you look at that and extend that over the course of 18 years, that is a cost, a fixed cost. We're going to get into business here and economics, but that's a fixed cost to you as a business, right?
Right.
So you got to account for that for every single one of these things that you ditch out. So you expand that out to however many you project over the next 5 to 10 years. You get to remove all of that if you go with conscription soldiers, right? Because now somebody else is floating the bill for the Luke Skywalkers that are growing up on Tatooine, and finally, when they hit the age of 17, 18 years old, you draft them, which is really what this is. And I don't know that I ever really kind of paid much attention to it or cared, but it was interesting that they made a point to call them conscription soldiers. So it is a draft of some sort that you don't really get to go to the Empire, which seems kind of counter to what, some of the other stories, Solo just went and volunteered. I mean, I guess you could still volunteer, whatever. It's not a big deal, but you get my point. Like, for them, it seemed like, and I'm not saying it's a strong argument. I agree with you. It feels like the cost savings are really not there. And I think the cost savings are evident in the original trilogy and what they got for their money. They're dumb. They can't hit. They can't shoot anything. They're just fodder. And it feels like it's just another reiteration of the droids. There's just lots of them. We'll just kind of bring in all these people and they all stink because we don't really train them. They're not as trained as like the clones. I think the clones are far superior, but there's a cost associated with there. So
right.
I'm with you though. I'm not.
They followed their orders of destroying the Jedi, right? I mean, and again, Palpatine, that unquestioning loyalty is the one thing that seems to matter most to him with what he needs to carry forward his plans. And so it was just very confusing to me that they're willing to sacrifice this. I mean, we already know what happens in the end, but we know where it ends up at the very least. But why this is necessary now? It's kind of silly. They could have just had Tarkin there evaluating the clones anyway, for stability and for anything else, and kind of built it that way. But for cost to be a consideration, I was like, this is a PG, this is a kid's show, right? So.
Well,
maybe. Like you said, it's important to learn economics early on, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we got politics in episode 1 and banking from
the banking clan.
Yeah,
I mean, and maybe in episode 2 they'll teach us how to balance a checkbook.
Yeah, so we'll see.
We'll learn the balance sheet. We'll get into some real financing and
cost
counting.
Of goods and total cost of ownership.
That's right. This is why you tune in to us. We'll translate it all for you.
Yeah, that's what this is about. This is an ROI, right? What was the return on investment? A clone versus a human volunteer.
Let's calculate the Roachi now.
Okay, with that, that's a great segue, not into the mess hall scene. And she's following around. Hunter turns to him like, "What are you really doing here, kid?" And I think this is where she, is like, "Where are your parents at?" And she's like, "Parents, right?" So I mean, that obviously took her back. And if she's a clone, she's going to be questioning. She's going to be like, "Hey, I don't have parents. You got just like you guys. You don't have parents." And I forget, someone mentioned earlier too that they're all kind of wearing the same colors. That was, when they're all together, it looks really good, and that's the reason why they're all wearing the same colors. For no other reason than that, I don't know that there's anything more like.
Well, and Omega was wearing the same. Yeah, Omega. Sorry to interrupt you. Mm-hmm. Omega was wearing the same colors as Nala Se, which makes a lot of sense. So when they walked off together early on in the episode, they're wearing the same colors. So she's wearing, like, if you will, either House Nala Se, or they are doing. That's what the medical research or whatever she was doing. Maybe that's their colors, but so I don't see that she's matching the Bad Batch. She's matching Nala Se, just for clarity there, I think.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably it. They all had a certain kind of aesthetic look to them,
sure,
as well. But
you're right, and they differentiate. So I mean, they pop out definitely.
Yeah. We get the name the Sad Batch, which I thought was funny. The poor those clones called them out. Like you said, they seem to remember the Bad Batch, even though they're following Order 66, and for all intents and purposes, their personalities seem like they're just really bland now and very different. They still, have the memories of the Bad Batch and the animosity between the Bad Batch and being called regs and all of that. So all that seemed to have been preserved, even with the inhibitor chip and the change in personality. I thought it was great that Omega and Wrecker were kind of on that same page. Like they're, she had like and I've always said this. Like I was talking to somebody the other day about who Wrecker was, and I said, he's just a big kid. Right. We see it's evident a little bit later with the little doll and just the stuff he does, but he is just a huge kid. And so you've got these two kids that kind of start this food fight, which I thought was a really good scene. Like I actually enjoyed that. I didn't think it's kind of cliche that there's food fights now. I mean, we've seen it in just about everything at some point, but I like that Echo was like, "Oh, not again." Like, "Oh crap." Here. That was a good line in there. And I really liked Crosshair, who was so like, didn't want anything to do with it. He was just sitting there trying to eat his food while this was all kind of going on in the background. And he only engages when that poor sap comes flying across the table, knocks his food over, and he's like, "All right, forget it." And he gets in and just starts whacking people. So even though he was part of Order 66 and, partially affected by the inhibitor chip and all that, it was good that he jumped in and, backed up his brothers and still had that bad blood, even with the people that were now on his side that eventually would probably be, reporting up to him. So,
yeah, I mean, he still has loyalty to the squad in some way. He just wants the squad to do the right thing and follow orders.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was a really fun scene. I didn't expect to like a food fight, but it was kind of cool that it was Omega kicking it off, and then Wrecker's like, "No, we're just going to go ahead and do this."
Yep. Yeah. Well, she'll start it, I'll finish it, kind of thing.
Right.
Echo takes one on the head. We get into the medical bay. We're introduced to AZ3, who I thought was, it felt like it is going to come back.
She was smoking at the end of when she got stunned. I thought it was just a stun, but
oh, really?
There was sizzling and some smoke. She was real close to the camera, but you can kind of see it. At least I think I saw it.
It feels like Omega needs a sidekick. You think about all the characters, they all have a side. I mean, it was like Chopper and in Resistance there was a droids. There was what's his face, the comic relief. I forget his name now. The one that talked really funny in Resistance.
Oh, Nico. Yeah.
Right. So there's one of those, and I don't think we have that yet. I could see AZ3 or AZ3 as being that thing if they do bring it back. They don't need it, but it may come back. I don't know how they go back to Camino and resurrect it or rebuild it or whatever, but I kind of like the droid.
Yeah, I was hoping we get some sort of actual callback to, the Clone Wars episodes, but we didn't quite get that, of course. But
I thought it was.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I thought it was funny that Wrecker comes in. It was like, "I told you," and he bet 2 credits on Echo's life. Mm-hmm. So again, this is just a credit to the comedy. I think it was good. There was moments in there that were, I think, well written and funny, certainly. But there's the
to answer Rob in the chat, yeah, this is the same droid that worked on Fives and other clones in the Clone Wars series as well. What do you think about Echo's reaction though when he was getting scanned and he was like he was in panic mode?
Well,
What
yeah,
do you think about that?
Well, I think it was a callback, right? It's that PTSD that he's got and having gone through what he did. I mean, yeah, like anytime that's happening, and I think that's why Omega was there, to kind of comfort him and said, if you turn the subtitles on, it's barely audible in terms of what's happening as he's coming to and things are blurry. But if you turn the subtitles on, she's basically saying, no, I don't want to leave him, right? She knows she wants to be there for him when he comes to, because she probably anticipates he's going to have these feelings of like what's happening and it's all happening again kind of thing. So, but yeah, I think it was pretty clear that he was really uncomfortable given what he'd been through already.
And I like that we got that touch still, that he still does have those memories and those feelings of being, confined and being restricted and just being experimented on. So I thought it was still a good touch for his character, because I thought Echo in general was a bit flat in this episode. He was probably the least interesting character in this entire episode if I depended on one character.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
A bit sad. Yeah, I was a little sad on that one, but maybe we'll see his moment to shine coming soon.
I think it will too, and I think part of that is, I mean, Echo is a character that he's had a lot of rich story development.
Right.
But you're right. In this episode, he was kind of way in the back. I think over time he will come forward, and I think some of that too is he's still kind of, I'm guessing he's still kind of figuring out his role in this group, maybe to some extent.
I agree with that entirely, because I think we see that too with, Crosshair gives him a bit of a hard time. Even Tech, I don't think Tech's trying to give him a hard time, but he says what's on his mind. He's a bit dry, and it clearly still bothers Echo. And I think you definitely get an idea or a sense that he still isn't quite sure he completely fits in. But then again, Crosshair is kind of a jackass to everybody. So, I don't know that I would look too far into some of that. But yeah, clearly Echo doesn't seem like he quite fits into the group still, but they definitely still care though, clearly.
Right. Yeah, and maybe, again, through his attachments, his appendages, he'll find his place and footing in the team. In the interest of time, let's get to the training facility. This was a cool scene, I guess. The first part was kind of whatever, but then when they turned it up to 11 and it became real, I thought that was a good thing. I like the whole battle simulation and hey, let's just do what we did on Felucia, and them kind of doing the Master Blaster thing from Thunderdome, where he's standing on top and controlling the droid. I mean, all that it's fine. I mean, I thought it was good. And it certainly, it was, again, it did speak to Tarkin's personality here and really kind of pushing the envelope. I didn't, Lama Su didn't like this. He makes a comment about, hey, this is, you're going to hurt my facility. Yeah. And my property and not only my clones. And he mentions that, hey, you'll be compensated kind of thing. But yeah, I thought it was a good sequence.
It shows you the ruthlessness of Tarkin still, and that this is the difference between the Republic and the Empire. The Republic had lines, and then Empire's gonna be like, no, it's either the well, this is where I was like confused. It's they expect more from it, but they want to pay less. So I'm confused a bit. But I thought it was cool. Of course, the coolest moment was like we had in the trailer, but we actually get to see it. Wrecker throwing the knife and Crosshair shooting the knife into the droid's head, which was pretty wicked. I'll give him that. And it was good to see Wrecker. I mean, Wrecker got hit a couple of times, which we had speculated in the trailer because we saw him on the ship and he looked like he was holding shoulder, but he gets hit again. He gets hit for the first time here. And again, it was just one of those things of these guys are human, and Tech, gets knocked out a bit kind of before too. Crosshair got knocked out by Caleb. So, they're still
vulnerable.
Yeah, and they're mortal, and so it's not that they're invincible. And I think that was a good thing to see, and especially when Wrecker got attacked by Crosshair later on, I thought that was really, really important to see.
Yeah, and not only that, but attacked and then uses bait for other victims from Crosshair. Yep. But more on that in just a little bit. Right. Okay, so let's get to the post-training facility scenes. We talked about the embryos and Omega not being the last. That whole thing about there's 5 remaining, you touched on that already, so we don't need to get into that. I thought, I remember when I saw this and watched it the first time when they said, oh yeah, one of their own filed a counter report. I thought, what a bastard. He like went he went and did like the paperwork, like turned in the paperwork and
Right.
ratted them out that's not exactly what happened. But again, he's just following orders, and that's what good soldiers do. Tarkin's mission, mentioning Alderaan and the insurgents, we're like, okay, I know exactly where this is going to go,
Right.
and it would make sense too, right? I mean, we'll talk about that here in just one moment, but this is where we get Omega's warning. What was she going to tell Hunter? I think it does speak to her powers, and I think she was going to give him a heads up that, hey, when you get out there, you may not like what you see, and this isn't droids, or these aren't droids. These are going to be real people, that kind of thing. I think she was seeing the future or had knowledge of it in some way, and that's what she was wanting to say. But then, maybe she's one of these. Maybe she doesn't want to do some of that stuff because she knows. Maybe she has experience in telling people those things, and kind of like when we talked about visions and prophecies, right?
Right.
Sometimes you can't make any changes to that, so it's better not to even just talk about it because it won't do anything and could make things worse. AKA Anakin Skywalker. But
Right.
I
I did like some of the nervous things that we did see, and we'll see another one later. But her kind of wringing her hands. I mean, it's subtle things like that with the storytelling. It just adds a little bit to it. And there was another one later on in the cell, which I'd like to comment when we get there too, because I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And letter 71 mentioned, that Tarkin did definitely like them. You could see him smirking when he was turning up the difficulty level.
Mhm.
Put it on hard mode, expert mode, whatever, Master Chief mode. That when he did that, yes, you could see him smirking like, yeah, this could work out for me. But I think he was really still, tactically, they were fine. He felt comfortable after what had happened. He probably got on board with the fact that they didn't follow and obey orders, although that's what he really prefers. He's still thinking, okay, I could probably exploit this and take advantage of them, but I need to know where their loyalty exists. And that's why he sends them on this mission as kind of one final checkbox to tick before he signs and gets on board with having them as part of the Galactic Empire. And of course, it fails, right? He's probably he knows this is probably going to fail, which is why he does it.
Did you say tick or tech? I can't.
Yeah, depends on where you are. If you're in Australia, it's tick, and tech. It's all the same thing. But we get
but yeah, when we get
go
I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, Lama Su though does go out and defend them. He's like, it's never interfered with their ability to complete a mission.
Yes.
Right, and that's where Tarkin's like, well, all right, we will test these guys then, and they will go and route out some insurgents, even though the war's over. Apparently, we have insurgents that are still with the Confederacy, and they need to go be wiped out, which is really curious. Again, the inconsistencies are just all over the place here with what they're hearing and what they're learning about the galaxy as a whole. But I suppose it's not unlikely that we still have clankers out there, right?
Yeah,
that are still pockets of resistance, but that wasn't what we were led to believe.
Yep, wipe them out, all of them.
Right. So yeah, Saw
Gerrera. All right, so they get to Onderon. Turns out, okay, it's not droids. 25 humans, women, children,
old, young.
Oh yeah, dogs and cats, mass hysteria. We get the return of Saw Gerrera and the Republic fighters / displaced refugees / former partisans, right? That's all there. We know that what that is. And it's cool because, Tarkin sees the writing on the wall. He sees that this was a threat and it's going to continue to fester and grow. And he wants to squash it immediately. So he sends the Bad Batch out there as kind of a test. But of course, they refuse to fight for the Empire, right? They realize Hunter has this he's got this moral compass. It's like, no, this doesn't feel right. These are, first, they're not droids. Two, there's innocent women and children, right? If nothing else, just we take these prisoners. But he's got Crosshair in his ear going, no, we need to take the shot. We need to kill them. Right. We need to do that.
Make the call. Yeah.
Make the call, right. So he's really putting the pressure on him to make a decision as the leader and to test his loyalty. Crosshair has like no kind of second thoughts or doubts about what he needs to do. Right? He's very clear, and I thought Saw does a good job of kind of planting the seeds. Putting the doubt in his mind about the Empire and how they're lying. They were already seeing it. It's all kind of coming together. Killing the Jedi and just the way Tarkin kind of turned up the heat on them and didn't really tell them. Right, all this is starting to really kind of come together as a cohesive story for Hunter and those guys. And this the last piece was him making them go on this mission where they were going to kill people. So Saul just kind of put it all in front of them and said, look, they're just lying to you guys and they're not really who they say they are. And he had a great line. There were Clone War to Civil War, which I thought was a good throwback to, I think, one of the crawls talking about Civil War. And then he has another great line. He says, "The old ways are done. You can either adapt and survive or die with the past," which I think is, probably we're going to see a lot of that. And we knew this was going to happen. And we've talked about this. We've speculated so many times about what happens after a clone is done serving, doing their duty. What is life like for them? I think it's one thing for life to be over for a clone or a soldier in the time of like the Clone Wars, as very different than when it's going to be in the Galactic Empire. So I think we're going to see remnants of that as they kind of go around jumping from planet to planet and touching base with previous clones, and factions are changing. I mean, this is all really cool stuff. Like, I think that's why they're doing 16 episodes. We're going to get a lot of context as to what and how the galaxy is starting to change with the shift of Empire to the, no pun intended, the shift of the Galactic Empire.
Right. Yeah, and I actually really liked this version of Saw. I mean, he's not this extremist that we see later on, like when we get to Rogue One, or what we hear about him and in the other stories, or even what we saw a bit in the Clone Wars. But he's just got this very real assessment, and he's got a very accurate assessment. I was actually really impressed with how they wrote this. It was written very simply and very to the point, but also really laid out for the audience, for us, of just what Palpatine has laid out and what is to come. The Jedi are gone. He has a galaxy-wide army of really well-trained and completely obedient soldiers. There's no one that can contest him at this point. He's been working on this forever,
Yep.
And I can't believe everyone's been so blind. And but that he still has this kind of hope, right? He still has this hope that, what, the clones and the Jedi gave us a chance. I'm going to give you this chance and this choice now as well. And it was very much a leap of faith for him that Hunter wouldn't just take the gun and gun him down or something like that. But I really liked this version of Saw, though. It was very different than, this is very much a core belief type of thing rather than fanaticism
That we get later.
Yeah, that we get later. Yeah, I mean, it's clearly the years were not kind to him, but I really thought it was a really nice dynamic and really different perspective on Saw that we had. Very still much like the Clone Wars Saw we saw, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he's got this more mature, and you could just see the grief on his face still when thinking about his sister, that, we now have an empire and we're no better off. And if we don't fight this, everything that we have been fighting for and have yet to fight for are completely a waste. And he's not going to sully her memory and let this fall while he has breath.
I would be down. I mean, it doesn't feel like it fit, but that whole, what happens to Saw Gerrera, what transforms him, and
that would be interesting.
It
Yeah,
would be good
freedom
to see,
fighters. Yeah.
To see what all transpires that puts him in that position that makes him go from where he is now. Like you said, he feels still grounded, right? War has changed him. War has impacted his life in every possible way, and with the loss and everything, right? No mistake about that. But he still seems like a very level-headed person, much different than when we get from Rogue One, and being able to see, even if it's just, they're checking in with him or all that, getting to see what all really happens to him. And it's not really his story, so maybe we don't get that. But I think it would be interesting. I would love to see, how that all kind of happens and changes for him.
Seems like a pretty sad story, to be honest with you.
You're right, exactly. And so they, they leave there. They're allowed to leave, and of course they do. And it's in that moment Hunter at this point has made a decision. We're done, right? We're no longer going to be part of this. There's one last thing we got to do, which is go back and take Omega, because she's one of us. She's a clone. She's one of the Bad Batch, and she can't be there because ultimately she's probably going to get killed or whatever else. And so they make the decision, not unilaterally, because Crosshair is like, no, this is terrible. You're not following orders, and this is where they have that kind of exchange about, hey, when we get back, you and I are going to have a heart-to-heart kind of talk, or come to Jesus meeting kind of thing.
Right.
They get back to Camino. This is where you mentioned that AZ3 is shot, and they take a Omega prisoner. They end up taking the Bad Batch prisoners, and they all kind of throw them in the brig together. And this is where I know it's kind of petty, but we were talking about, they're wetsuits, and we said Under Armour or whatever else, but it looks like this truly is just what they wear,
just the bodysuit. Yeah,
the bodysuit. So, oh well. Yeah, so Crosshairs continue to struggle with his, not following orders at this point. And there's a great line in there where they're kind of all sitting in the, they're all behind in the brig now, and they're standing behind that gray shield. And this is where Omega comes over, and it's one of the better moments in the episode where she comes over and sits down to him and kind of speaks to the old Crosshair, or speaks to that the humanistic part that's still in him, and says, I know what you're going to do, but please don't. And he kind of turns and looks at her like the inhibitor chip wasn't working, so she was getting to that part that wasn't working here. You could see it in his face that
Right.
he was probably struggling with it a little bit.
And it's not your fault.
You can't help it.
Yeah, I mean, she lays a hand on him, and again, he has kind of this hard look at first, but before he looks away, he kind of looks down. And of course, you and I know when you kind of look down, whenever someone's telling you something really hard to hear, and you have all this conflict, because we see him also resting his head or resting his knee on his elbow on his knee and touching his head, and clearly he's struggling to, come to terms, or struggling much like what some of the other clones had, where the chip was working and it's not necessarily quite effective, and it's doing something to him. And this fight inside of him, he's kind of losing it at this point. But I agree with you. This is one of the more touching moments in the episode. I did not see it coming. And I thought it was really a great moment for Omega to have this kind of insight into the clones as well, and about what it actually meant. And I think if you want to speculate about how this comes about in later episodes, especially as we get introduced to Rex, if we start to see some of the other clones, maybe she's as a medical person or something like that, maybe she's instrumental in helping remove some of the chips from some of the other clones that they come around and find.
Yeah, I think just to kind of put a point on what you were saying too, it feels like he's reconciling in the betrayal that he's feeling. You know what I mean? He's doing things, he's making decisions, he's not comfortable with them, but he can't stop himself from doing them. It's the same thing that Rex was going through, right? In that final season before.
Good point.
Ahsoka kind of took him and straightened him out a little bit, but yeah, he's feeling all those same kind of emotions there. Okay, so from there, this is where they take him back. They intensify the inhibitor chip, for lack of a better term. That's all they say. They just basically crank it up and kind of really convert him over 100% now, as with all the other ones. And this is really kind of the birth of, I guess, one of the antagonists for them. I assume he's going to be in this series now, hunting them down and leading troops and all of that. But he's fully crossed over at that point.
I'm assuming he's the Agent Callus of this one.
Yeah, there's Agent Callus. There is, well, that's a spoiler. Never mind. I won't say anything. Okay, so then we get there's a cool moment in there where Omega is imitating Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
The dialogue's going on, but if you've got children, they do this, and it's hilarious when they do. I was thinking about, like, there's a scene in, not to date myself, but in Jaws, there's a moment in one of the movies where Roy Schneider's character is kind of doing stuff, and the kids mimicking. It happens. There's plenty of other examples in movie stuff, so I don't know if this was a tribute to one of those scenes or whatever, where it's just
this idolizing type of thing.
Exactly.
Clearly she knows who these guys are, because she named them all off. But
but it does speak to that, again, that bond that they have, that of all of the clones that she really kind of idolizes and wants to mimic and kind of fill the shoes of, it feels like it's Hunter for whatever reason. So the dad there, and we'll see that a little bit later from the trailer. But go ahead.
And I really like Tech in this one. I told you there was a mannerisms, I think, add a little bit of something. Tech is there. It looked like me, I swear, because I have this nervous leg thing where I will just shake and bounce my leg all the time, and he's thinking and doing the exact same thing. And I'm like, that's me, But it was just, but again, it's just these very human mannerisms from these guys who, these are soldiers. You expect them to be very stoic and some very serious minded and stuff, but to see what happens when they're kind of going through and thinking it was a really nice touch that was completely unneeded.
Yeah.
But was so great to see, just that little touch of something. This was a really great sequence within the cell for 2 or 3 moments I thought were really, really cool. And that was one of them, along with Omega's little speech to Crosshair.
Yep. In video game design, that's known as idle animation.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. We're full of trivia tonight.
Yeah, we are really knocking it out of the park with random stuff.
Rando stuff. Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, they escape. Not a big deal, right? They blow a hole. They get a panel open. She crawls up there, falls down, pulls the lever. They get out, and they make their way out of there. Nobody was hurt because they were still kind of moving there. They head out to the hangar, and they get all their equipment. This is all very convenient. That's fine. We're trying to get the story moving along. and they suit up, and then we get Crosshair's new look, which I thought was awesome. Like to see him in that dark helmet, and not dark helmet from Spaceballs, but in the darker helmet. And it, when I first saw it, it looked like a Death Trooper helmet to me. And then I went back, rewound it the first time, and it's more of a Stormtrooper helmet, but it's got the
I,
green going on. Do you think this is like the evolution of that, and we'll see that?
I got to be honest with you. I didn't notice that it was anything different than what he already had. So I need
Oh
to go
yeah,
back and go back and look at that a little more closely and have a side by side.
no, he's definitely got a different helmet altogether on. His other helmet's kind of more narrow, almost like the
Yeah.
almost like the what was the stormtrooper? One of the stormtroopers from Solo, the ones with the boots, with the fur and all that, the fur coats or whatever they were.
Oh yeah.
I can't. Those guys,
Yeah,
whatever.
the train troopers ones, whatever they were called.
But that helmet that he was wearing normally has kind of like this, almost like a beak at the end of it, and this looks like a stormtrooper helmet, like a Empire stormtrooper helmet. Like I don't know if he's the prototype or whatever, but because of the markings, the dark color, and then the green in it, I thought, okay, well maybe this is going to be the evolution, or so maybe this turns into what the dark troopers are at some point. I don't know. But
I got to be honest with you, Albert, I was so enamored with we talked about the animation, the lighting, and the shadows. This sequence, oh man, this sequence, the close ups of both him and Hunter, and man, this was a gorgeously lit scene. I mean, this was on the money, and like this type of thing should be like award winning type of animation. I strongly believe that. I'm not just saying that as a Star Wars fan, but I think this is just award winning quality animation in this episode, and this sequence really highlighted the improvements that they made in the series.
Right. I know, I agree. And it was very tense. This is where the music, I think, was probably the best in just helping kind of set the stage and set the tone for what was happening.
Yeah.
We got the kind of Western showdown where they're both, fingers are near the triggers or on the triggers, ready to fire.
Right.
It was pretty intense. And then, we've got Wrecker getting shot at that point.
By Crosshair.
Yeah, I mean, and then Hunter being aware of the fact that he's not going to kill Wrecker because he's waiting for someone to go help him, which is I think Omega's first instinct to do, given that she's a medical assistant and maybe she has powers, who knows? But her ability, he stops her from going out there, saying no, this is part of what he wants to do. He knows them, and I think that's an important part because they know Crosshair. But the thing that makes Crosshair super dangerous is the fact that he knows them, right? He knows their tactics. He knows what they're here. He can anticipate what they're going to do because he spent so much time with them. So I think he becomes the ultimate antagonist for them. Although my guess is there are going to be other ones still. So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, and then this is where also, as they're trying to finally escape, we get Namaste. Nala Se is trying to keep the bay doors open, right? Crosshair tells them to close it. She's sitting there overriding that. For what reason? I guess because she wants Omega to get out of there, right? She wants to see that her quote daughter is allowed to live another day.
That was really curious, and I thought we would get a little bit more with the conversation with her and Lama Su at the very end. We got a hint, but yeah, it almost seemed like she really cared, or that there is something special, and she wants to see that live on, which is really interesting because the Kaminoans usually have a lot of pride and ego with whatever they're doing, and it's their property. But this had a very different kind of feel to it in this case. But and I think, go back to Crosshair. I mean, this guy can see through objects, right? He can see heat signatures, so he knows exactly where they're at as well. And like you said, he knows all the tactics and everything that they're going to do. And the best that the rest of the Sad Batch or the Bad Batch rather, can do is lay down cover fire and try to just distract, and try to see if they can pull Wrecker from this and not get themselves killed. And of course, his tech is taking forever to fire up the engines on the ship. I don't think I've ever seen
what's going on.
I don't know if I've ever seen a ship take this long to boot up, but well, it made for a very powerful scene at the very least, and very, very tense at times. And the impressions or the feelings I got were, you remember the episode with what was his name, Pong Krell? Yeah, with Krell, and he turns the clones on one another. I mean, it felt just like that. It wasn't with the regs though. It wasn't with the other troopers or the shock troopers. It was very much Crosshair versus his team. But now it's very intentional. Of course, Crosshair's been manipulated here, but it was that kind of like feeling like this is just wrong. I
Right.
mean, these
Doesn't
guys have
feel
just
right.
got to be in complete shock as to like how can this happen, and how can, you know, why, they want to take him with them, but there's nothing they can do about it. And they just got to leave. But it's got to just be killing them. So it'd be interesting to see how that weighs on them throughout the rest of the season. Although they seem relatively okay with it when this episode ends, but I don't know about that longer term.
Yeah, it's almost like Rex was probably bigger, when they were sitting there trying to get out, escape, and him and Ahsoka were there, and he was kind of crying because he was having to go against his brothers, right? I mean, for
Yeah.
Rex, right? It's the same kind of feeling here, maybe even more for these guys since they're so close and they are all very different and stayed together. But yeah, and I guess the one thing that again, Crosshair knows them. He knew what to do. He had the upper hand in the situation. The X factor was Omega, right? He
Right.
wasn't anticipating that Omega would suddenly pull out a blaster, pick up the blaster, and shoot his rifle out of his hand, which was what they needed to get out of there. And so, they make their escape. But again, that just, and we talked about it earlier. We've got some people that just joined, but that does speak to, I guess, one of her powers or a power of sorts, whether it be, force sensitivity or natural abilities, multiple different types of abilities. I think that's kind of, one of the two buckets that most people are leaning towards, ourselves included. But yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes and what I can't wait to find out what she really can do, and how that plays into the overall storyline and what she's able to bring
Right.
to the team. Okay, so let's get to the final piece here. Nala Se and Lama Su. I think you hit the nail on the head. Nala Se seems like she is all in on supporting her, and I think Lama Su feels like he's not in the know. Like they feel like maybe they're on two different pages here. But I think they both are in agreement, at least, that hey, this empire doesn't seem to like us very much,
Right.
and let's not do anything until we have a better sense of who they are and what they are. Man, I'm telling you, there's like, and then I don't want to start calling predictions and stuff. Although, to be fair, I called some pretty good stuff in Mandalorian. But the one thing that I'm thinking is, I want to see, Camino get destroyed. Like I think Tarkin's going to just level this thing, whether it's through Star Destroyers or some pre-Death Star tech.
Mhm.
I think he's going to put that whole thing out of commission and be done with it. Just sink it, unfortunately, which I hope they show. I think it'd be pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it will be something. I think in general, how the clones get, oh man, for lack of sensitivity, put down, right? Of how this actually happens. And God, I have this sick feeling that they're going to somehow have a self destruct in this inhibitor chip. That's just going to kill them
Oh,
all.
wouldn't that
Yeah,
be Order 67?
yeah, right. Yeah, Order 96.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I just have this feeling that type of thing. But again, there's got to be a reason for that to happen, unless the Bad Batch start recruiting of sorts and they start to actually see other thing where Tarkin's like, okay, now they're a liability because we're seeing pockets of resistance. But again, that's more on the speculation side of things. But yeah, I think I'm agreeing with you though with Lama Su. I think right now he's like, you know what? It's probably better that Omega is not here with all the attention that Tarkin is giving this place right now. So she's probably better off there, and then we'll see if we can get them to come back at some point, maybe or something to that effect. But yeah, something has definitely everything has gone to plan, but now the bottom is starting to fall out, and they don't have any kind of power or control over it, and they think negotiations are going to do it. Well, it didn't really work out for the Naboo, and didn't really work out for the Neimoidians in the end either. So yeah, you're putting your stock in the wrong bush here.
Yep. And then the final scene is them getting aboard the Havoc Marauder, which is the name of their ship. There's
What happened to the drawing?
what drawing?
Didn't they have a drawing of
Amidala.
Amidala on there?
Yeah,
I
that
don't.
was
I couldn't see it.
it was a pinup girl that they originally had. They scrubbed that scene though. Remember from
Oh, that's right.
when they released that when they finally redid it or finalized it for season 7, they scrubbed that scene altogether. It's out on YouTube if you want to see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe a little bit sexist, but yeah, that was a different time, and it was Lucas, so slave bikinis and all that stuff. But yeah, no, that wasn't in this one. But yeah, so Omega says, "Hey, this is the first time I've been anywhere," which I thought was cool. We had Wrecker and his little Lula doll. We'd seen that before in
Mhm.
Rebels and
Right.
somewhere else. Resistance. I don't know. It was another. It's a Filoni thing. It's like Lothcats. It just pops
Yeah.
up in all of his stuff every time he does
Right.
it. And then we get the, hey, this is the first time I fired a shot. I mean, I guess I got lucky. I mentioned earlier the first thing I thought of is Kenobi's. In my experience, there's no such thing as luck. So is it the
Right.
Force? Yes, no, maybe so. We'll see. We'll see. And then we get the kind of the big send off cliffhanger, if you will, that yeah, they're going to go to J19 and they've got a friend out there. They said they've got a very short list of friends, probably true, and they're going to go visit somebody that they know. This is the guy from The Deserter,
Yeah.
Cut. I don't remember his last name, but that guy was a defector and a deserter, if you will. He goes and was he like a farmer? He met
Yeah.
a girl who had kids and they were living on the land, and suddenly in one of the episodes they get there and Rex is really against him being a deserter because he's a soldier and he should be fighting. And then there's that great moment at the very end of that scene where he tells Rex, "I need you to stay here with my family and protect them." And then he goes downstairs and takes that first stand, and that's what kind of earns Rex's respect of like, hey, you may not be a soldier, but you're a family man and you're putting your family first and that sort of thing. And so he respects him for that part.
Yeah.
So I think he makes a friend in Rex. He makes a friend with these guys, I guess, but I don't remember them. I don't know how they know this person, but that would be a natural link to somebody like Rex because we know Rex is in it because we've seen him in the trailer, right? So
Hmm.
there's got to be a way to segue into Rex coming on board, and maybe Rex is there. He runs into Rex, who's
Yeah.
seeking refuge there as well, since that guy's out there in the middle of nowhere, living this very
Yeah.
secretive life, low key kind of life. But
Yeah.
sorry, any final
No,
thoughts on that whole last part there?
yeah, no, I think that's kind of where I was going with it too. I mean, it'd make a great point if they knew where Rex was, and it happened to be with Cut, laying low, living this kind of simple life until things, clear out. And yeah, man, back to that episode in Deserter, Rex was injured, and it was very much this is my homestead, I'm going to do it, and Rex started to appreciate that about him and didn't turn him in and allowed him to just kind of retire effectively because really, and Rex, I mean, he learned a lot that day of, this is what we don't know what's in store for us when the war is over. And why shouldn't we have the ability to look forward to something in life and to want something besides fighting and war? Even though Rex is like, well, that's pretty much all I think I'm going to want because
Yeah,
it's all I know.
right.
But so it makes sense that they would stay in touch with Rex and maybe they knew where the last known location of Rex for whatever reason. But so I think I would like to see that connection rather than directly to Cut. But I could see either way really works, right? They can go through Cut to get to Rex, and maybe you don't want to do all of your big scenes and big reveals up front on the show. But again, I think it makes a lot of sense for it to be Rex there with Cut, just living the simple life and whatnot. I did want to touch as we kind of wrap up the episode. We touched a little on music, but I think there was a moment early on, and I forgot to mention it, when Order 66 is carried out,
Mhm.
you can actually hear some of the Order 66 music in the
Yep.
background, which is, I think, again, there were 2 or 3 moments in this episode, and the one you pointed out and that one, Order 66 scene, were the 2 that really stood out to me that had that moment where it was just like, oh my gosh, it was brief, but it was very much the same type of, little melody from the movie, from Revenge of the Sith, and I thought that was really important to be able to do that. And Johnny's in there plugging his own shirt. Nice job. Sorry, I got taken out of it. I was like, someone's asking about the shirt. Cool deal. And it's Johnny, the guy who helps commission them.
Yeah. Hey, you missed it too, Johnny. So we already plugged it. I've been throwing this up there at the bottom and mentioned that those shirts are still out there. So again, before we get out of here, go out to Silver Creative, silverlegcreative.org. The shirts are still available for donation. So donate generously and get some of the cool swag, including this shirt, again, which I have not taken off. I even took a shower with it. So, but yes. Okay. So I think that's going to do it. We've got, the next what? It's how many hours before this next one comes up?
Oh, we are, man, just like 6 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
that.
we're doing this on Thursday night, so May 6th. 'Cause we had other stuff to do, but
We're just going to keep the stream open the rest of the night, and we'll just
no, we're not.
we'll fill in the gap, and then
No.
we'll start a live commentary.
No, we're not. But we're going to come back here. When are we doing this again? Sunday?
Yeah, Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday night. So
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day. Oh man, we planned that horribly.
We have a habit of doing that. So we'll see if it happens on Sunday, folks.
Right,
But
yep.
we will be back soon
Yeah.
to bring you episode 2 of The Bad Batch to see where our merry crew takes us.
And I think it's only going to be like 30 minutes. So
Yeah,
it's,
now
it's
we're
a
back
pretty-
to normal.
Back to normal episodes, links and all of that. So probably not a big deal. I'm sure we can manage something. But yeah, so there you go. What are we at? An hour, 40 minutes for a 70-minute episode. It's about par for us.
Actually, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good if you think about it, right?
As much time as it took for us to get through the beginning part, I was not sure what this was going to look like.
Yep.
But come join us on Discord. We got a really great conversation going on. We've got a whole channel dedicated to the Bad Batch. So earglemedia.com/Discord. Join the conversation. We've had a bunch of new people in the chat tonight. So wanted to thank Ken, Rob, Johnny's in there a couple of different ways now, M. Letterer, and then some of the old guard as well. We appreciate everyone coming out and supporting the show on the live stream. But yeah, definitely come have the conversation. We've got some of the great folks you guys have seen on From a Certain Point of View. Of course, are super active in Discord chat as well, and fantastic conversation going on there. So please come out and join us and get your 2 cents heard as well.
Yeah, and then lastly, before we go, we've got more episodes of From a Certain Point of View coming up very shortly. We are counting down to May 16th, which is the official 10th anniversary date. We're working with Mike on something right now. We're working on Jonesy and we're doing. I've got some surprise guests coming on the show to do some interviews, so I'll just kind of leave it at that. But we got a lot more stuff planned for the 10th anniversary, so if you're not a Patreon member, please subscribe to that because they'll get the content first, and we've got some exclusive stuff that we're going to do there. But all in all, it's the celebration continues here. So we'll be back in 2 days to cover the second episode of The Bad Batch. So until then, we'll see you there.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.